join you this evening on behalf of the Manitoba Human Rights Commission to put a few words on the record regarding Bill 225, the Public Schools Amendment Act, Universal Screening for Learning Disabilities. If passed, this law will ensure that all students in Manitoba's public education system are proactively screened for learning disabilities, in particular for reading disabilities, reading difficulties or disabilities, and that this information will be shared with students, parents, guardians, and families. As you may know, the Human Rights Commission is an independent agency of the Government of Manitoba, responsible for enforcing the rights and responsibilities set out in Manitoba's Human Rights Code through a complaints process and by promoting human rights through education, research, and public advocacy. In 2023, you might be wondering why I'm here. So in 2023, we launched an initiative entitled Supporting the Right to Read in Manitoba, which explores the pathway to ensuring that every student in our province is able to access their fundamental right to learn to read, a right that has been recognized since 2008 by the Supreme Court of Canada in the landmark Moore decision. This project began as really a result of community advocacy. The Commission was approached by a group of concerned students and parents who were not receiving the supports that they needed to learn to read equitably in Manitoba schools. Their concerns, combined with the efforts of our colleague human rights commissions across Canada to explore this issue, led us to initiate this project. And we're planning actually to release our Phase 1 report later this month. And I'm drawing on some of our learnings through this phase of our project to present to you today. We are focused on this critical issue because we appreciate that a failure to develop early reading skills has significant impacts on a student's later academic performance throughout K-12, but they don't end there. We have heard countless stories, you've heard them this evening, of how difficulties learning to read can impact a student's confidence in their academic abilities, their overall self-esteem, and lead to significant mental health concerns. This is consistent with academic research, which finds that too many students and parents that are impacted by this issue experience depression and anxiety, experience school avoidance, bullying, feelings of very concerningly self-harm and suicidal ideation. And we know that the long-term consequences of low literacy are significant. It can impact employment opportunities and result in lower income, poverty, and homelessness. And we have discussed and see in data how individuals with low literacy are overrepresented in our criminal justice system. In this way, reading is a key that unlocks a person's access to a matrix of rights, opportunities, and possibilities. As part of our project, we wanted to explore the issue of early screening because it's one of our key pillars that we're examining as part of this initiative, and we've really come to understand that it is an essential component for successfully supporting and teaching all students to read. Early screening, we've chatted about this tonight, is a data gathering tool to determine which learners in a classroom may encounter reading difficulties. They're meant to be fast, informal, and evidence-based. That's critical. They should provide data that can be interpreted and used to predict future possible reading challenges. And the practice of early screening is intended to contribute to successful and inclusive approaches to teaching literacy skills by proactively determining which students may require additional support in learning to read and what those supports should be. Early screening is a key component of building those foundational literacy skills and that lifelong relationship with reading that is so crucial. Simply put, it gives educators, caregivers, and learners the opportunity and the tools as early as possible to know about possible reading difficulties and, importantly, do something about them. The longer we wait to intervene in a learner's challenges with reading, the less likely they are to respond positively to intervention. And the more difficult reading becomes, and the less likely a learner will be motivated to read or find joy in it. Early screening is also a component of a human rights-informed approach to literacy and teaching in schools because it allows educators to proactively identify barriers and, in alignment with universal design for learning principles, work to remove them through strong, responsive, data-informed, and what we call tiered instruction. The peer-reviewed research on early screening for literacy, as well as the data gathered through our special project, demonstrates overwhelmingly that acting early to identify and address reading difficulties is the far superior approach to delaying intervention or waiting to see if a learner's reading skills will improve on their own. The negative tangible impact articulated by our special project participants and some of those perspectives you've heard here this evening of not screening, screening infrequently, delayed screening, inconsistent screening practices, using improper screening tools, or incorrectly using a proper screening tool, so in a practice that isn't meant by the tool itself, and not properly using screening data, all of that has been shown to be really significant in a student's outcomes. And I think it's important to highlight that early screening is a clear recommendation of the Minister's Advisory Council on Inclusive Education, who in their 2022 report note, and I quote, "Assessment and resulting data collection improve student outcomes and teacher efficacy, strengthen inclusive practices, and ensure a clear, cohesive, consistent understanding of appropriate instruction, assessment, and reporting for all students. The data gathered at provincial, divisional, school, and student levels will help inform decisions about ongoing resourcing and support and provide clear, consistent information for parents," end quote. Now, we know that the province is already moving ahead with plans with respect to early screening. As we continue to make these important strides in strengthening early screening for reading difficulties and disabilities, we're cognizant of a few lessons learned from our project that I wanted to share here tonight. It's really important to have a clear and common understanding of what constitutes an early screener. It should be evidence-based, reliable, objective, and measurable. That's important because we heard consistently that different educators, different divisions have some differing ideas about what an early screener really is. Another issue that we heard about was that even again, when an appropriate screening tool has been used, we can't always guarantee that it will be used appropriately. For example, evidence-based screeners are accompanied by particular parameters. They're intended to be used in particular ways. And it's important because if they're not used appropriately, that could be impactful in terms of the data that we're gathering. So very important that screeners be used not only as they're intended, but in the ways that is set by the screener itself. And we've heard consistently through our engagements with the public and with educators about how important it is that the screener not end there, that the data gained from screening inform instructional practice. We heard from participants in our special project that there really is a missing link between screening outcomes and what happens next, that screening can't be a standalone practice. It has to be a link in a chain of events that sets students up for the best possible success at learning to read. Once a screening has been administered, the data or information from that screening must be interpreted and used to inform teaching praxis, including focused instruction and intervention for some students if needed. Many participants that we spoke with, particularly practitioners, clinicians, and educators, noted that among making the link between screening and turning data into action will take time, training, and support for educators, parents, and students alike. And many have expressed to us that they had to educate themselves about the screener that they use, and it's important as we roll this out that educators have support in doing so. So finally, early screening cannot exist in a vacuum. It has to be accompanied by the other tenets of strong reading instruction: direct, explicit, systematic, evidence-based instruction, reading interventions that are supported by evidence and available to all students that need them, accommodation not in place of, but as a support to good reading instruction, timely and accessible professional assessments, and very importantly, particularly for the rollout of early screening, ongoing professional development for all those involved in this work. That is job job embedded, robust, and flexible to meet the needs of all educators. So I'll conclude my remarks there. In effect, we wanted to ensure that our learnings are reflected here this evening and speak to the importance of early screening and a comprehensive approach to reading instruction as a human rights-based issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sharma. Emily Lamoureux.
Thank you, Ms. Sharma, for your presentation and just all the work that you've done with early screening in your role at the Manitoba Human Rights Commission. My question for you is, could you speak a little bit to the importance as to why the idea of early screening needs to be legislated and regulated and not just verbalized?
Ms. Sharma.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that what we need to ensure is a strong, comprehensive provincial commitment to early screening, and one that links practices of early screening to strong evidence, and that has a really strong approach in terms of rollout if it is going to be successful. So that educators are really supported through good, job-embedded, ongoing, robust professional training to do the screening in an effective way, but then really to use that data to inform instructional practice. So in whatever form that takes, the important thing is that we have a robust province-wide approach to early screening.
Minister Schmidt.
Thank you so very much for your work on this special initiative, Dr. Sharma, but also for your work, obviously, on human rights in Manitoba generally. I wish I had more than 45 seconds. I could say so many nice things about the work that you've done. I believe that our government does now have a strong, comprehensive approach and an initiative and under the ministerial directive. Something we have here in Manitoba also are democratically elected school boards. We believe strongly, our government believes strongly in the need for a local voice, local autonomy, the freedom for local communities to make decisions to meet their local communities' need. Do you, considering that we are seeing some ideological swings around the globe, I'm thinking about to the south of the border, I'm thinking about even other provinces, sometimes education takes on a real ideological bent. Do you see any risk in the legislation putting the final decision making in the minister, considering that there may be ideological swings in government?
Ms. Sharma.
Well, I think the risk of not ensuring a province-wide approach is that a comprehensive, way of ensuring good reading instruction might be at risk in terms of those whether they're ideological swings or philosophical swings or what have you. So that's where I think the efforts that have taken place to date in terms of ministerial directives with respect to early screening are so critical. But I do appreciate, and I think Manitobans have made clear, that there is a role for local school boards in setting direction. So that balance has to be found in terms of allowing local voice to guide the decision-making process. That being said, that balance has to be between ensuring every student, no matter what corner of the province that they're in, has access to equitable education outcomes, no matter where they reside. What we heard continuously is literacy is a key outcome of our education system. No matter where you reside, you should learn out of your K-12 education how to read. That is one of the pillars of what we're doing there in the education system. So that being said, I think there has to be that right balance between clear provincial directive and the allowance of local school boards to set their guidance as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Sharma. Emily Cook.
Hi, Ms. Sharma. Thank you for coming tonight. And I just wanted to say how much I value the work that you do and the importance of this work in particular. I think when we look next door to Ontario and the impact that the Human Rights Commission there had with their report and the positive impacts that's had in that province, I think that speaks to the importance of the work that you're doing here. So I don't have a question, but feel free to comment, and thank you for coming.
Ms. Sharma.
Thank you. And I will just say, whether it's the work of the Commission in Ontario or Saskatchewan, we just feel it's really important that no matter where a child resides in Canada, that they have access to the same high quality, equitable education. And so we really want Canadian children coast to coast to coast to have access to the right to read.
Emily Cross.
Thank you so much for bringing your expertise to this committee. You said something really important. I agree. Early screening, super important. You said professional development embedded in the work that teachers do. My question is this. What kind of conversations have taken place with the faculties of education to ensure that teachers that are graduating are prepared to do this sort of assessment or to do any kind of reading assessment? You know, I graduated in 2015. I spent 9 years teaching and I did a lot of teaching in that time. But I can tell you
Emily
that
Cross, I'll just have to stop you for one moment. Is there leave for Emily Cross to finish the question and for Ms. Sharma to have time to answer?
Agreed.
Agreed? Go ahead, Emily Cross.
I wasn't prepared to do that. I learned it on the job. So I think there has to be some responsibility and onus on our faculties of education. Just what are your thoughts on that and what have you looked into?
Ms. Sharma.
Thank you. I think that you're absolutely correct that there is a role for both in-service professional development as well as pre-service teacher education in improving the overall outcomes when it comes to reading and giving our teachers who are clamoring, like we heard over and over again that teachers are spending so much of their own funds to do professional development on their own time to gain the skills that they need to be able to do this work. And that isn't, fair for anyone in the system. And so we've had conversations, obviously, with the faculties of education. We've also been paying attention to previous reports, whether it's the Advisory Council on Inclusive Education, the K-12 review, that have all looked at, the kinds of things we really need to do in terms of teacher education to boost how we're approaching inclusive education more broadly and doing more than maybe just 3 credit hours to ensure that all teachers get what they need around inclusive education through their degree program.
Thank you for your answer, Ms. Sharma, and for the presentation.